Ladies and gentlemen, in this RedGamingTech.com video, we're going to be discussing recent rumours and supposed leaks on the internet that have been saying that the Xbox One is designed to always be on for about 10 years. Furthermore, there's information regarding of how cool the console runs, and just why the console is so damn big as well as some other bits and pieces as well. So it's going to be quite an interesting analysis, I think. As per normal, a lot of the stuff is not confirmed, so you'll have to take it as a kind of a pinch of salt. But once again, supposedly it is from a high-placed person in Microsoft, so I guess we'll have to see. Regardless, let's jump right in. Now, the basic premise here is that Microsoft wanted to keep away from the whole ordeal of the Red Ring of Death on the Xbox 360. We know that the whole Red Ring of Death cost Microsoft about $1 billion. Now, that's a substantial chunk of change, even to Microsoft. And when you think about it, when you think about all the various issues that they had, lost sales, for example, people who traded in the machine, cost of repairs, cost of research and development to actually try and fix the problem, bad publicity, and goodness knows what else. You can imagine just how quickly that starts to really impact things, especially as a lot of the RROD issues were starting to hit about the same time as the PS3. Not to say that the PS3 was free of these issues. We all know that it had its own yellow light of death issues as well. So the Xbox One, as you are probably aware by now if you've been following the news, which you most likely have, is designed to basically be the centerpiece of your living room. In other words, it's designed to be able to switch inputs and basically interact with your television as you would need it. And so an unnamed, highly placed source, once again, this has not been confirmed, but still, they are basically telling us that the life cycle for the system is going to be 10 years. Furthermore, the system is designed to be switched on for all of that time, and of which you won't be turning the system off. It'll always be online. Now, this is completely contrary to even, say, the Xbox 360 or the PS3, or certainly any of the consoles beforehand. I mean, obviously the Wii had a standby mode, but this is a bit different. Think about it this way. This means that the system itself has to be very, very reliable, because if you're basically leaving it on for 10 years, you can imagine just the wear and tear. So how is it managing to do this? Well, for a start, we do know that the system itself is pretty damn humongous. It's far larger than the PS4, and also larger than even the original Xbox 360. The original Xbox 360 wasn't exactly a behemoth. It was noticeably smaller than, say, the original Xbox, should I say. But still, the Xbox One, the next generation Xbox, is noticeably larger. One of the reasons behind this, of course, is better airflow. There's also other benefits as well. Most noticeably, benefits such as better cooling. Now, one of the reasons the Xbox 360, just in case you're unaware, I'll quickly go over it. One of the reasons that the Xbox 360 had issues was heat. Now, all it basically was is the heat. Generally, there are a couple of issues actually with Red Ring of Death, but the leading cause was basically the X-clamp. Now, the X-clamp was basically a clamp in the shape of an X. Really imaginative, huh? But basically it was in the shape of an X, and it was supposedly there, well, it was there, not supposedly, there to keep the GPU and CPU heat sinks, which of course are there to extract the heat from the two devices, the GPU and the CPU. But basically, when it got really hot, and there's such tight conditions, if you've ever opened up a 360, you'll know exactly what I mean. If not, Google some pics from the original Xbox 360, feel free. And you'll see that basically what happened is the board itself would start to warp, and often this would cause the solder on the boards to actually become loose or maybe even break. Now, there were multiple issues. It could even fry one of the components, for example, but primarily this is where that you could do things such as, for example, the towel trick. Now, the towel trick, just to quickly go over it, is basically you get your Xbox 360 and you turn it on and you wrap it in a series of towels, and you basically just leave it to kirk, quite literally, for a period of time, and then you leave it to cool down, and the purpose behind this is basically to reset the solder. It gets hotter than the blazes of hell, just to warn you. If you've not tried this before, don't even put your hand at the back of the vents because they get really hot. Anyway, to move back on to what we were actually talking about. So supposedly, one of the development sources has been actually telling us that the prototype, and by us I mean the community, have been telling the community that the actual prototype versions of the hardware supposedly use pretty much exactly the same chassis as the final retail unit. In other words, the version that you're going to be buying in the shops this year. It didn't even have working power lights. On top of that, it was pretty much impossible in terms of audible operation, in terms of the noise it was created, to actually figure out whether the actual system was on or off. Now obviously these are claims that haven't been substantiated yet. After all, I don't have one sitting right next to me on my desk to do noise level comparisons, but even the PS4 is said to be fairly quiet, and so it'll be very interesting to see just how true these rumours are. Now, the purpose behind this is that the system itself is supposedly supposed to keep as quiet as possible unless you are doing something that is going to put strain on the processor / graphics card / internals. So, for example, if you decide to, say, fire up a game. Now, one of the ways that we do know the system is going to be noticeably quieter, particularly while gaming, is because the actual DVD drive itself, or should I say the Blu-ray drive itself, not DVD now, doesn't actually need to be spinning because the game itself is installed after the initial setup onto the hard drive. This means that the game then only needs to read from the hard disk itself, rather than needing to, well, rely on a noisy Blu-ray drive. Now, if you guys are familiar with the Xbox 360, one of the actual noisiest parts of the machine is actually the DVD drive. It's actually pretty loud. Later models, not so bad. We also know from leaked pictures from Wired and various other websites as well of the internals, and by leaked I mean Microsoft have actually shown them deliberately, purposefully, that the actual heatsink and fan itself is much, much larger. Now, you guys can actually do an experiment of this by yourselves if you happen to have a couple of desktop fans around. I'm talking about the actual type of fans that go inside your PC. If you have, say, an 80mm and 120, you can actually listen to the noise difference. You'll notice that the 80 typically is a lot whinier. One of the reasons behind this is that the larger fans, they don't generally need to spin so fast. One of the benefits of this is, of course, less noise. Also, apparently, it's going to have a much better heatsink in general. Now, this coupled with the AMD Jaguar processor. Now, the AMD Jaguar processor, as you're most likely aware by now, you can probably repeat this with me, is a mobile processor. It's designed primarily for mobile / tablet devices. Now, the benefit for us is that to get the performance required for a games console, in other words, to get the actual CPU performance to really play games of the next generation, they've put two of these devices together on the same die, because obviously a Jaguar itself, the base Jaguar, only actually comes with 4 cores, so they've strapped 2 of them together, which of course doubles the cache and everything else, and these are under 2 modules. However, the benefit is that, quite simply put, heat is a lot less of an issue. The actual GPU inside the Xbox One is not easy to replicate in terms of PC. One could try, and one could draw a couple of parallels. The probably most accurate one would be the Radeon HD 7790, so 7790. However, there are some distinct differences, and one cannot simply... And this is something we're going to talk about completely in a different video, because it verges on a completely different topic. Well, not even verges, it is a completely different topic. But the 7790, the Radeon, actually has not only, well, a lower clock frequency. In other words, the actual GPU clock speed is lower. It's 1000 megahertz rather than the 800 of the Xbox 720. Although, bear in mind, Xbox One, not Xbox 720. That's what you get for covering something too much in the olden days, I tell you. But not only is it 1000 megahertz versus 800, it also has 14 GCN compute engines rather than the 12 of the Xbox One. So, obviously, quite a substantial difference. In case you're wondering, by the way, you can by all means feel free to get those specifications. I'm getting those from the official AMD website, and various review websites as well have the power draw for that card. It's about 90 watts. Obviously, however, once again, it will be significantly less based upon the Jaguar design, simply because, once again, less clock speed and less GCN units, as well as not taking into account things such as the memory and stuff, regardless. Now, we know from Microsoft's previous comments, in fact, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, I did an analysis of an interview regarding, well, why Microsoft went the direction they did, and just why they've got such a large operating system footprint. Now, this is actually based, funnily enough, Microsoft did a kind of pretty much exactly the same as Mark Cerny did, but they did it internally. They looked at one of the issues of the Xbox 360, or what were the issues of the Xbox 360, and one of the primary issues that both Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 had, as I'm sure many of you will attest to, was lack of continuity. It didn't feel contiguous a lot of the time when you were doing things. It felt that the games and, say, I don't know, the marketplace at times were separate. It felt that web browsing and social aspects of the consoles were too separate, and it basically felt like you were segregated. That's how Microsoft saw it anyway. This is very different to, say, how a PC or a tablet or whatever would deal with a game. Apart from a few gosh darn annoying games on the PC, I'm looking at you, Skyrim. For some reason, I don't know if it's just my system, whenever I Alt-Tab and then Alt-Tab back to the game, I have a mouse pointer right there. I don't know if it's just the fact that I'm using the video, I have tried updating the drivers and stuff, or what, or maybe the game just doesn't like me, or maybe I've offended it somehow. But regardless, most games, as you know, you can simply Alt-Tab or do whatever you need to do, and no harm, no foul. So if you get stuck on a game, you can just Alt-Tab. Oh, okay, that's where I need to go. Check out a YouTube video, check out game facts, whatever you need to do. Oh, okay, cool. This is where I have to go now. And it makes things a hell of a lot simpler. Same thing goes for Skype. If one of your friends gives you a phone call on Skype, you can just accept the phone call and then talk to them while you're leveling or doing whatever the hell you're doing. So this means that, in effect, let's say that you decide to do something. Let's say you've not played a game in a while. Let's say you're watching TV or browsing the internet or doing whatever the heck you want to do. And then you want to go back to the game. Well, the game basically saves a state in the memory. And because it's doing that, it means that you can snap back and forth very quickly. Now, this is very similar to the PlayStation 4, but obviously the Xbox One also integrates all the TV services as well. Now, personally, and once again, this is my personal opinion on my own TV/gaming habits. This is by no means a distinction of the viewing habits or whatever for everyone in the world, but personally, I just have no problem using remote control, and a lot of the time if I'm gaming, I don't really like distractions. I will be honest. I do, however, admit that I am very guilty of things such as web browsing. However, for example, let's say back in WoW, when I used to play that quite a lot, I would use Wowhead or whatever to figure out where the hell a quest is. Obviously, that's not really required anymore. Or let's say that I'm really stuck on a game, which isn't very often, to be fair, but let's say I am playing a game and I have no idea where someone is in, say, Skyrim or whatever, because the quest marker isn't accurate enough, or I'm just getting pissed off looking around for a dude, I'll quickly YouTube it or whatever. Generally speaking, however, most of the time I don't really like to do that. I like to just stick in with the game, but maybe I'm old school like that. I don't really appreciate this type of integration, but once again, that is just me. Maybe, you know, I certainly don't speak for everyone. Furthermore, we do know that Microsoft have had rumours against them. Multiple rumours actually regarding the heat of the console, and even yields as well. Now, the problem with a lot of these rumours, and this isn't being pro-Microsoft or, you know, against Microsoft, the problem with rumours, as you guys are aware by now, a rumour does not necessarily equal truth. Now, sources have basically been stating that the Xbox One, you guys may remember that there were rumors that the systems were actually being really loud and noisy and producing a lot of heat. Now, apparently, this was based upon the development kits. Now, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, some of you probably are, but a lot of the time the BIOS/software itself, operating system, will basically take control of just how fast a fan spins. In other words, it will say, okay, the hardware is designed to run at X degrees, and I noticed that now it's getting a little bit toasty because we're playing games, and it's pretty, warm in the room, so I noticed the temperature has gone from, let's say, a comfortable 50 to, say, 62. I don't like that. I am going to increase the fan speed some to try and offset this. Now, obviously, overheating happens when the fan and the heatsink and everything else simply cannot accommodate the amount of heat that is being produced by the chip. So let's say, for example, the thermal ceiling, just for example, is 80 on a particular chip, and the fan is spinning as fast as it possibly humanly can. It's all efficient. There's maybe maybe your room's a bit hotter than normal, whatever. Maybe the fan air vents are blocked, maybe there's dust in it, whatever reason, but it simply isn't being enough, and therefore the system will overheat simply because the fan isn't able to pull out enough air or get enough air in or whatever, and that's how a lot of the time overheating does occur. However, in regards to the Xbox One, one of the reasons apparently that this fan was actually running so fast and the noise was so much was quite simply because the development kits, the early development kits, operating systems, they didn't actually have the thermal controls. And so the theory was that they would just crank all the fans up to absolute highest speed and that would be it. Now I can actually give you an example of this on my own PC, and this is something I actually encourage you to do if you're looking at overclocking, whether it's a CPU or a GPU, particularly GPUs as it turns out, because they're very easy to do this with. But let's say you're overclocking a GPU. I actually never overclock my GPU without turning the fan to the 100% if I'm testing new settings. The reason behind this is quite simple. If I'm unsure whether something's going to be stable or not, I'll run it at 100% first, and then I'll test out a new clock speed. So for example, let's say the GPU clock speed is 800 MHz base. Let's just use the Xbox One's figures because it's fun. Let's just assume it's 800 MHz base, and let's say furthermore that I want to overclock it to 850. Well, before I do this, I'll overclock the fans to the absolute highest settings, and that way that I know that if this thing crashes, there's absolutely no reason other than heat. Unless I do something really impressive, like say water cooling or liquid, some other ridiculously convoluted method of cooling the system, such as say liquid nitrogen for the CPU, which a lot of people use for say benching records or whatever, then ultimately I know that that's not stable. So Microsoft, all they did is at this point they said, okay, well, we don't actually have this in yet, so we're just going to run the fans at the highest speed, so there's no danger of anything falling over, and there you have it. And then they basically updated the BIOS, or so the operating system, and it now can handle that, and now it's quiet and stable. So once again, this is simply a feature of the operating system, well, not having the feature. So there are a couple of questions, of course, this raises. Firstly, do you actually want to leave the system on 24/7? Some people are going to say, well, why the hell not? It's designed to. Others are going to come up with arguments such as, well, yeah, but you're still wasting power. Ultimately, if I'm not there in the room to utilize the damn thing, let's say, for example, you go out to work at, I don't know, let's say you've got to be at work for 9 a.m. and let's say you don't get home until 6, especially if you've got heavy traffic or maybe you go to the gym. Well, if you're not using the thing between like 9, 8, maybe 10 hours or whatever, what the hell is the point in the thing being on? Same as if you're going to bed. So some people are just going to be like, well, I'd rather save the power. There are other issues as well. A 10-year shelf life. I am very curious on the hard drive issue. Because as far as we understand so far, they've basically said that you cannot use or change the hard drive. Now, I do have some issues with that aren't really related to just shelf life. In other words, a hard drive, not regarding an SSD, which is a solid state drive, which in and of itself, by the way, does have issues. It's not like an immortal, hardware piece. They do break down, because most things do. But regarding hard drives themselves, they are certainly becoming a hell of a lot more reliable than what they were, say, 10, 15 years ago. But that isn't to say that hard drives never ever break, and sometimes they do. I've had 1 or 2 hard drives fall over on me, and it's not a pleasant thing. All hard drives are, and we're talking about the standard hard drive that most likely you've got in your system, is, well, magnetic platters, and they spin really fast, depending on the speed, by the way, depending entirely on, well, the type of hard drive. But they basically calculate them in RPM, so for example 7200 RPM or whatever. Therefore, obviously they can break. Now, I'm not exactly sure what would happen if your drive broke. I'm assuming what would happen is that you would be able to return it to Microsoft, and assuming it would be under warranty for a fee, or sorry, if it was under warranty, I'm assuming they'd fix it without a fee, and if it wasn't under warranty, then maybe you'd have to, well, cough up a little bit of cash, whatever, but maybe it is, I don't know, it's far too early for them to have even said anything like this, but that does kind of worry me. I'm less worried about things such as the fan or whatever dying. But obviously bearings, ball bearings, or whatever the fan actually has, for example, even RAM can die. As I said, though, however, a lot of this is simply to make games a lot easier to jump in and out of, and to basically not make so you have to wait for the system to boot up or do whatever the heck you want. So in theory, of course, assuming, well, all these rumors turn out to be true, in theory, you could basically come back to the game 8 hours later and the game would have saved the state, so you can basically pick up right where you left off, which obviously does have numerous benefits. Obviously, this isn't counting stuff like power cuts, so we'll be interested to see what happens in those type of eventualities, unless, of course, it saves state or whatever after a series of time, maybe a state to the hard drive, but who the heck knows. Regardless, I think that's just about it for this particular video. Hold on to your butts, however, because there's going to be a hell of a lot of tech analysis stuff. It was supposed to be today and tomorrow, but it's actually turning into quite in-depth stuff. I've been doing research in the background of RGT's labs, but it will be coming up this weekend, so there's going to be a lot of stuff. There's also going to be numerous other changes appearing on RGT over the next week or two as well, that I'll keep you guys apprised of. Maybe I'll do a vlog or something, which will be like the second I've ever done for the channel. But regardless, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I will see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.